Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Tuesday edition of the MSP Initiative Live. Today is December 6th, and lo and behold, the year is ticking down to the ball that'll drop and bring us into 2023. I feel like it's the busiest December I can remember in a few years. Maybe that's just because everything got smushed into the back end here of 2022, but that's not a bad thing. That just means that you have some runway into 2023, and hopefully we don't get too crazy there. But we'll talk about that today. You'll find this podcast and every other podcast we've ever recorded at mspinitiative.com under sessions. It is in audio and video format, so pick whichever one fits you best, especially not video while you're driving, hopefully. And yeah, today's special guest, and I appreciate him from coming on because I think he found about this a little bit last minute. But Shane Deegan from Threatlocker, welcome to the show today, my friend.
Thank you, George. It's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago. I think I saw you at a very, very wet Orlando.
It's always wet. It's either, even when it's hot, it's still wet. You know how it is.
Yeah.
That humidity never gets old.
Yeah. Well, we did have some hurricane weather, or so they said, but we still were able to swim our way through the wind and the rain, and had a pretty good Orlando experience there not too long ago.
We did. Big shout out on that one. That was one hell of a party. Big time.
Hey, where there's a will, there's a way, right?
There is indeed.
So I guess topical today, as technology land never stops. Looks like Rackspace, and that's a name that's been in the industry for a long time, announced that their hosted exchange product, which they're kind of famous for, right? Before Office 365 was 365, Rackspace was doing hosted exchange. And it looks like they had a prolonged outage this past weekend. They just came out and announced that was due to a ransomware incident. Just goes to show you, doesn't matter whether you're big or you're small, that kind of thing still happens. Very big topic throughout 2022, through all the events I've been at, was that the insurance industry is starting to figure this thing out, and they're starting to, cover less and pay out less, and or charge more and not pay less, collect more, deliver less. It's probably not the best tandem, but anyway, I digress. So security. I feel like that's a never-ending topic because it's real. That's the reality. It's real. So, Shane, you've been at a lot of places. You talked to a lot of MSPs this past year. It was a very busy year. I know everybody came out of the pandemic coma and just went crazy. So we saw a lot of events this year and a lot of people in person, which I prefer, by the way. This is like my secondary thing. I love being in person. So why are the bad guys so successful at causing these types of incidents? I know that's a big, wide open question, but is it literally the simple things that everybody forgets to do that ultimately jam you up, or is it just getting harder to kind of keep the bad guys out of the mix?
I think at this stage it's kind of a mix of both. You see your security researchers and top tier guys kind of reiterating over and over again, cover your basic patching, basic training, and you're seeing that fail time and time again. That's backed up with the other side of things that these organizations, you've seen these ransomware gangs getting more and more complex, restructuring to almost mimic or just essentially be a legitimate business with obviously illegitimate, a mission statement, whatever it be. But they're hiring, they have HR departments, they've got incentives, they've got all this stuff that we see internally.
So is it the ransomware sales comp plan? Is that how this works? Like,
I think
there's a sales team and they get a commission, or how does it work?
100%. Yep, 100%. It's tiered up just the way it is here. So internally, obviously, we have our sales teams, and they have their base salary, then they have their compensation awarded depending on how they perform. You're seeing the exact same thing. You're seeing the inner workings being leaked from a lot of these organizations. And that's what it is. They have HR teams, recruiting bonuses, targets set. They have different tiers of engineers, if you want to call them, or hackers or bad actors, whatever you want to call them. So they'll allocate these leads essentially. So they've got leads to a small mom and pop business. They might give it to a tier one hacker. They get leads to a large scale bank or government body, and all of a sudden they get to bring the top brass in to work on these. So it's just mimicking what we're seeing in any of your typical business and vendors. It's wild how it's gotten.
Wow,
I mean,
that's crazy. That's crazy to me. I mean, at the end of the day, I just think that, there's a lot of solutions out there. I feel like we're in security overload because there's just so much innovation in security land, right? Like it's almost at the point now where you're like, do I have tools overlapping other tools? Do I have, like what's my overarching plan and how do I execute on it as an MSP who didn't start in security land, right? I almost, I keep on reminding people to caution themselves on calling themselves, anything, right? I know we have our friend Keith Nelson online. He'll tell you time again, right? Like, be careful on how you present yourself because that could come back to bite you on the other side. I love the security focus of MSPs. It's just, I think it's very difficult to build the competency inside of your organizations to actually fight this on any large scale. So I just don't know what the price point is for that chain, right?
Because you're seeing as well the rise of, a lot of these guys, like a lot of MSPs transition from break fix. That's where a lot of them got their start. That's the typical tried and tested formula. But when you see, and I see it quite often, like people transition to MSPs with dollar signs in their eyes. They're not security practitioners. They don't know. And I'm not here to say I know everything. Far from it be the case. But some of these guys are coming and all of a sudden they haven't even run an MSP, but they want to start an MSFP. And at that stage, you start going down that level, down that it gets very tricky, because you mentioned Keith Nelson. You see all these guys. You got your Matt Lees of the world, all these guys who are just live and breathe this stuff. To get to that level, you need to start somewhere. But just landing in, setting up a business domain, calling yourself an MSSP, all of a sudden, it just doesn't bear weight at all. It gets pretty tricky.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge, right? Because everybody's scared of their name in the headline somewhere, right? And we've had a lot of that this, I don't know, let's call it past 24 months, right? There's just been a lot of named big things that have occurred. And then, you couple that with a little bit of the financial uncertainty happening in the market, and you couple that with, I guess, it's a little bit outside of the industry news, but we're going to bring it back in, right? That FTX, right, going belly up and cryptocurrency. And like, that's kind of sort of how all these guys transact, right? Through these like, digital things, right? Currencies. So it feels like it's just very shaky. Is wild west the right definition? I don't know.
But it seems that you're a road warrior. You're on the road so much, and I feel like I do quite a few shows. I'm still amazed that you go to some shows. There's a whole string of new vendors, time and time again. I'm like, at this stage, where does everything fit in at this stage? Because vendor fatigue is real. It's certainly real on the end user as well. When the MSP is constantly trying to sell them a new widget or a new solution, a new tool, whatever it be, but you have to draw the line eventually and say, hey, what are the bare essentials that I need here to run my MSP and keep my end users protected? Certainly coming into, everyone's feeling the headwinds, that the economy isn't doing so great and we're in for a bumpy ride. So at that stage, people start to really kind of reevaluate their stack, and not just security, but all the convenience tools, the bits and pieces in there that just make your life that bit easier. So it comes down to tightening those purse strings. What is it that's going to be left, remain? What are the essentials to MSP in that stage?
Yeah. Keith Nelson, you're out there. By the way, congratulations. You're America's team, so you call it. Another one in the win column. So congratulations to you and the rest of the Cowboys Nation.
Solid fourth quarter.
Yeah. Don't forget, the Eagles are still in that same division, and I think our record's just a little bit better, but that's okay. I think we have a rendezvous on Christmas Eve.
How about four teams out of one division making the playoffs?
Has that ever happened before?
No, I don't think so. That'd be interesting.
NFC East has flipped it upside down. So
to your point, security doesn't scale well downward. And that's one of the issues. You have to hire, there's no guy You know, there's no like IT guy who does everything from printers to networking to security to desktops to databases to applications. Now, that's something we've been preaching to our customers forever. The reason they have to hire an MSP is because they can't hire a guy. And then internally, we try to do that as an MSP. And you're going, you need a guy that just sits there and keeps track of the threats. And it doesn't scale downward very well, right? You're going like, it'd be too expensive to have a security guy with less than probably 1,000 seats. It really is, you know, you need to be watching what's going on, the landscape changes. And then as you pointed out, many of these guys migrated from break fix to all of a sudden they're an MSP, which who knows what the hell that is, and then an MSSP. And then what do we just keep adding letters until we feel good about ourselves? You're going, it's an education process. You got to hire specialists. And because I teach that, you're going like, they're a little bit of an unusual breed. Hope I don't insult anyone doing that, but they're really committed to this cybersecurity and really learning. And I think it's a different personality than you can go out on the street as an MSP who's also selling and talking about business process. And you know what? Your client really doesn't want to know what's going on underneath the covers because it's so specialized. They want to know you're protecting them from what's going on underneath the covers. Just my opinion.
So let me zoom out. I'm going to ask a big question. Is the one-man internal system admin role extinct? Does that even work anymore then? Or is that a myth now?
I don't even know how. I could see it as a project manager, administrator of subcontractors. But as the guy, no, it just doesn't. I mean, you're very limited in the quality of a product you can deliver, and the hygiene would be nil.
But even at that as well, we run into a huge amount of co-managed environments. That's what we're seeing time and time again. So for that one internal IT guy who can manage the, you know, maintenance and the cabling and phones and whatever it be, you know as well as I do, this is a constant educational journey. Like, you can be elite today and be outdated tomorrow. You need to be up to date with new attack vectors, the threat landscape, and what tools are out there. You know, it's constantly evolving at such a rapid pace that if you're not living and breathing in that space, like even me as a sales manager, I sit on quite a few webinars from vendors, from MSPs, from stuff like this, just to kind of keep myself up to speed, at least regurgitate that information and what's out there to my team and say, hey, look, this is the attack vectors we're seeing. This is how people are stopping it. This is the issues that MSPs or MSSPs or end users are facing, to make it at least that they have a bit of background on it as well. But you take your finger off the pulse for a few months and you're already outdated at that stage.
Is it true that like 80%, this is putting this out there, I've heard 80% of the incidents aren't somebody trying to get in from the outside, it's a human being clicking or doing the wrong thing on the inside. Is that still true? Do you believe that's still the majority of where, you know, like people are either getting fooled into doing something incorrectly, they click on the wrong thing, they press the wrong thing, and that then just, you know, opens up Pandora?
I wouldn't be surprised. You know, I've heard that figure thrown out quite a bit. And, you know, being a security vendor, we have a huge amount of people come to us after a breach, after a compromise, whatever, after some kind of security incident. And a lot of it, yeah, sure, it is, you know, down to either poor training or they just ignore training. You know, some people are untrainable. Let's be honest about it. So all the training in the world. One example, for instance, my last operations manager, massive corporation, she used to move she had 3 screens. She used to move her windows back and forth over different screens. She didn't know how to minimize. At that stage, oh yeah, she'd been working with computers for 20+ years, had no idea how to minimize the window. I showed her, she thought I invented it. She thought I wrote this bit of code to do this function. So at that stage, she was also the same person who would share everything on Facebook, you know, what street did you grow up on? What's your favorite color? Yada, 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 this kind of stuff. All the training in the world. At her, at operations, you know, level, keys to the kingdom, keys to everything in that corporation, at that stage, you need something to protect themselves from themselves, essentially. So
George, you brought up the classic chicken and egg. You're going like, was it internal? Well, it was internal because it was motivated by external. So
Sure,
it's
they're
kind
getting good at
it's
tricking
kind of
people.
circular. You didn't do something stupid just on your own. You did it in response to a phishing email or a link. So it's kind of like this circular, what came first? Probably the bait. Now, and that's completely external and going to live with us forever and ever and ever and get better and better and better.
So Keith, I mean, you do a lot of stuff, right? You're in education, you're in a bunch of different areas, but do we now need to, as part of the, recruitment hiring process, validate that you have a certain level of computer skills, right? Like the aptitude that you can learn what needs to happen or not need to happen in order to bring people on board. Is that legitimate?
I actually think you have to develop the processes, the business processes, and the workflows with quality vendors so that the right people can do the right job. And that's not technology across the board. So I think you have to make the back end protect the users. You're not going to replace a great sales guy with a great tech, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to replace, one of our customers is aerospace, a pneumatic bending guy who's a machinist who's just not technical. And that sounds kind of odd because he's running a pneumatic bending machine. You're going, I couldn't go to that company and say, get rid of him because he falls for stupid stuff on the back end. They're going like, he makes us millions of dollars. It's my job to make sure that I can fence him in and let him do his job freely and without interference, but without threat.
So Shane, the constant battle, I've never heard this been solved, is that the user experience is becoming so bumpy, is maybe the right word, because of all the extra steps they need to order to work with all of these various, security things that, it's almost slowing them down to be able to just work. Is that still the case, or do you feel like it's getting better?
it depends on the end user themselves. Different end users have different expectations. Some get it, some don't. Certainly the model we take will definitely, it'll definitely impact them. You want to have to request something. You want admin rights to do anything. You had to come into us, request it from Threatlocker or from the MSP and approve it. So in that regard, and the thing is, a lot of our top clients, like, yeah, look, it definitely slowed down a little bit, but the alternative is, getting hit this and this. So it comes down to the end users. Some will appreciate, some will push back, some won't even go to dual factor. You know what that is. It's mind-boggling. So yeah, it just depends on the specific end user, what their needs are, what their expectations are. Are they security focused or security conscious? Are they willing to sacrifice that little bit of convenience to have a more secure environment and protect themselves? And depending on their awareness and their knowledge and of what's going on in the world or what the threat landscape looks like, it'll shape their opinion on it. If you see someone who's either been hit or knows someone's been hit with some kind of security incident, their attitude changes very quickly. The other people who read it in the news, I'm too, the common thing, we're too small to be hit. We're only a small mom and pop company. We're only, whatever it be. But I spoke to a restaurant manager not so long ago out in Disney Springs here, but they got hit pretty bad. Everything got cryptoed, pulled into the cloud, and they were the guys we never thought it had an impact on us. But all of a sudden, your timetabling software, everything that's running your business for the next year, and these guys are fully booked, like months in advance, is gone. Like, how much did that worth to you? If they give you hit you with a ransom, $250,000, what loss in business that going to cost you? That will cost you millions of dollars to pay $250,000, to fix it. Well, hopefully fix it to give your data back. So people who go through incidents or know people who are affected by it, their attitude shifts very, very quickly. And unfortunately, it is getting more and more common. You've seen it. It's gone from, like, talk of security and hackers and all that kind of stuff has shifted from conventions or technical people like yourselves at conventions to the forefront. My mom is a principal in a school back in Ireland. Her security budget went up $100,000 last year. And all of a sudden now she's asking what's going on. She's invested in it, and it's not just hers. I meet people who in traditional walks of life would have no knowledge or no interest in security or cybercrime or anything. All of a sudden they're taking note. They're sitting there listening. They're curious. How often do you see it? All of a sudden, you're seeing obviously with Russia going into Ukraine, it's been front page news and all the back and forth, the attacks going on. But it's front page news now. People are realizing it's not limited to high level corporations. It's not restricted to government entities, military targets. It's open season right now. You're seeing charities, you're seeing schools hit time and time again. You're seeing obviously healthcare facilities, hospitals are being crippled with this time and time again. So I don't know. It's definitely shifted the focus from people, and they're willing to commit both time and money, and that little bit of ease of life to make sure that they're not getting hit, or hopefully, but not can't make sure, but hopefully, reduce their attack surface so they're less liable to be hit by something like this.
Fair enough. And obviously they're willing to put some money towards it. What that dollar amount is, that's the big question. Let me shift for a second. So not too long ago, I think like within the last 30 days, you guys announced that you acquired a company called Third Wall.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone, like I know Threatlocker is pretty popular now. I think most people have heard of you somewhere. I'm not sure they've heard of Third Wall. What did they do, and why did we acquire them here?
So Third Wall gives you the ability to create policies in your OS. Traditionally it's only been through ConnectWise. It's been tied to ConnectWise predominantly. It's just a way to harden your environment, build out policies through Microsoft, and just really, really harden your environment. A lot of it comes down for us. The play was, it's going to check a lot of boxes in terms of compliancy. That's what it is. They also have not so much an EDR function, but they have something akin to, segmentation as well. So they see something happen, it's responsive, they segment it off as well. But the big play for us is compliancy. We have a huge drive in business for us coming towards us for CMMC, HIPAA, all GDPR in Europe, Essential 8 in Australia. A huge amount of our market share is dedicated toward compliancy. So, name the game, we need less tools to cover more controls. So by doing that, the acquisition of Third Wall is where that fits in. We are currently building a standalone agent, so it won't be tied to any particular RMM, and then we'll have integrations with all your major RMMs, hoping early next year as well. So that was a play for us on that one.
Awesome. So basically the goal here was, hey, you guys do what you do already really well. You guys have bought some new products, to them, since your kind of core solution. Mm-hmm. This is meant to, effectively check boxes from different compliance angles, right? So that you can apply almost, I don't know if group policy is the right word, but some, basically
it's similar.
You're locking down your workstation environments to comply with whatever the industry thing that you're trying to check box for, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
George, you brought up an excellent point earlier where you were talking about cost per all the security, and you're going, that's really not the question.
What's the question?
The question is, first of all, you're going, how can I integrate all this into the business processes to keep their labor efficient? Because
that's very difficult based on the fact that you have, I feel like like I used to say coming into 2000, average MSP is going to have 40 to 45 outside vendor solution software, something, call it whatever you want, technologies. They have to consolidate into their offering in order to do it. And then security kind of blew up. And then like that brought like another 10, 15, 20 solutions potentially on top of the 40, 45, became its own animal to some degree. So like, how do you get all of those individual things, right? Like we could name them all here, right? Is it MFA? Is it spam filter and link checking? Is it, DLP, right? Which is data loss prevention now. And I think, somebody was on earlier that said that's the next big thing that they're going to try and enforce at the workstation level. Is it, narrowing traffic based on certain IP addresses or geofencing, or, and then you get some of the stuff that Threatlocker does, application control and whitelisting and ring fencing of the applications on the machine. Like by the time you start adding all these things up, Keith, I mean, how do you keep the experience good for the end user? Well, that is actually the $1 million question. That's what I
Well,
want to know.
it's part of it is I mean, for decades, we've been running computers in kiosk mode, which is
Yeah.
kind of the early grandfather to zero trust or limited trust, whatever you want to call it. You're going, it wasn't only about security back then. It was, I don't want George playing solitaire because he's
Sure.
supposed to be building widgets. So there is this true business value into locking down computers to create labor efficiency. And I challenge you to find a business, which would be very rare, where labor isn't their big cost.
I would think almost every business, that's their cost.
The increase in $25 to $50 per workstation to make sure they run efficiently, effectively, is minimal to labor savings in a week, let alone in a day, let alone a month or annually. And the next thing is, when you look at, you say, especially in highly efficient workflows like lean manufacturing, you're going, one workstation compromised causes them more than you're going to pay me for the entire year of securing their network.
Well, in that case, right, in when you're in like a manufacturing environment where one station holds up the rest of the whole business process, right? I mean,
Imagine we don't send out 10,000 longshoremen on the West Coast one day, even for an hour. You're going, you have to look at the business cost.
But I feel like, and I hate to use bronze, gold, silver, right? Because they're so overused. But and let me go back to an example I brought up a long time ago. What about the donut shop down the street? Okay, like they just don't have the same requirements as a CPA or a lawyer or a school, right?
Sure they do. They're selling experience. If you go into your donut shop, and there's no coffee because their inventory isn't flowing right, or they don't have your favorite donut, eventually you're going to go somewhere else.
Sure.
So everyone sells experience. That's what you buy. What a car is a car. Why do you buy a Mercedes or a Porsche? For the experience.
Because it's not a Tesla. That's why.
Right. Because you buy it for the experience, right?
No, I got you. So
if
like,
I go into my donut shop, or I go to Panera every morning, if I go in there and the coffee pot's empty, I'm gonna start hitting up Starbucks.
Fair. Or here at Wawa. I know that's kind of starting to be popular in Florida too, down by Shane. But
love it.
But like, not every business has the complexity as others. So is there such a thing as narrowing the security footprint based on the size of the customer, right? Because that also, I would think, if the customer is a smaller retail place versus more of a professional services business, the amount of budget they can apply towards technology like this changes, right? I mean, I know back in the day, I don't know if this is still true, they used to say, hey, take 1% of your gross revenue annually, and that should be what's applied towards technology. I don't know if that's the number anymore, but that's what that was what it used to be. So 1% of a retail donut place versus 1% of a law firm are surely going to be different.
On the other side is the ability to survive an incident doesn't scale down well either. So the donut shop, you're going like, your exposure is higher because you don't have the reserves. It goes a week, you can't take credit cards, you may be out of business, right? So it doesn't scale down well either. And I think it is relational because they have a less smaller network and you can do a lot of things to simplify it. And those security add-ons are really not that costly.
This is true. This is true. Shane, I'm going to throw it out there. Please don't be offended, but I get worried when an MSP says, hey, this $1 per seat, per user, per machine add-on solved everything. I just don't think that's realistic. But these people, I promise you, I've run into people who have said, I'm good. Yeah. Oh, okay. But I don't feel comfortable that one product, that $1 per user, is going to fix all of your security problems.
No, and we run into it quite a bit, and unfortunately we see recently we worked with a pretty substantial sized MSP, made 10, 12,000 endpoint who at one stage he was boasting me how much he spent with Microsoft every month. It was wild money. I mean, wild money. And then he started talking about a security stack with pennies. I mean, pennies. I met him way back, maybe a year and a half ago. And sure enough, he came into us a year later, been hit with 2 major security incidents. I mean, terrifying stuff. But back then, I couldn't tell him. I couldn't say, and that's not me talking about other vendors, not me talking promoting us. I can say that is not a security stack. That is a one-dimensional, one way of thinking. You know, just these guys are dynamic. These bad actors, you know, they're creative, they're crafty. You know, they'll figure out ways. That's where a stack comes in. That layered approach we all talk about. You know, there's no one-stop shop. There's no silver bullets. There's none of this. None of that, even remotely. Even within the most advanced security stack you can possibly offer. You know, if you're still guaranteeing anything, you're crazy. You're crazy or an idiot. You know, it just doesn't happen that way.
So let me ask you this. Let me turn this around. How much does the insurance policy? I hope there's one, because some people just don't have it. Okay, but
Yeah.
how much does the security policy dictate what investment in security efforts go in versus not?
Honestly, what we're seeing now more and more. I don't know, maybe a year ago, it wasn't so much of a question, it wasn't much around as much in conversation. But you know, you're seeing, we go to these conferences, you're seeing more and more, you know, keynotes and breakout rooms about insurance. So when you talk about compliance, CMMC, HIPAA, whatever it be, they realistically, they haven't got much of a bite to them. No one's been audited, no one's been fined. You know, that's the reality of it. So what's happening is now, like all the compliance talk we want to say, it's not really pushing the needle. What is pushing is insurance companies. Hey, you're not compliant. You're not adhering to, you know, EDR, MDR, SOC 10, whatever it be. You need to check all these boxes. So all of a sudden, when their end users get these quotes in, or these outrageous policies, because the insurance companies have been just like writing policies willy-nilly for the last few years, thinking that nothing's ever going to happen. We're never going to pay out. This is free money for us. Fast forward now, and you see that's not the case, obviously. So they're scrambling back to the drawing board, writing, compensating now with these outrageous policies, or even just not quoting whatsoever. Like a lot more just pulling out of the market. So you've seen the rise of, you know, the MSP focused insurance companies now, and cyber insurance focused companies. So now all of a sudden those end users are saying, well, my policy went from $2,000 to $20,000 in the space of a year. What's going on? How do I get it back down again?
Hold on. $2,000. Who's paying 20? Like, I don't see anyone going from 2 to 20 and actually paying the 20.
No, they're not. They're just straight up. I'm like, just getting some wild quotes. We've seen some wild quotes being thrown out, some crazy, outrageous quotes. But we'd also deal with large corporations as well. So that's where the big numbers are coming in as well.
Well, if it was a large corporation and they were only spending 2,000 on whatever their cyber, that probably wasn't enough. Let's be honest.
100%. So even for your typical end users, we deal with your mom and pop shops, small to medium-sized businesses. When they're seeing their quotes coming in, how come it's increased 100% or whatever it be, and how can I get it back down? You need to start checking these boxes. So while you don't want to be compliant, you know, you want to check boxes to get your insurance down. That's the drive there. They don't care about compliance. They care about getting their premiums down. And that's when they start going to different vendors and what boxes they can check. And certainly we see that a lot in Australia. You know, our second largest market outside of North America, I think up until last month, I think was Australia, which is crazy because they were so heavily locked down during COVID. We just couldn't get down there. We couldn't do shows. And we did very, very limited marketing, if anything. But they have what's called the Essential 8. So it's 8 controls you have to have in place to work at a federal level. And it's pretty proficient. It's been kind of adopted across the board, not 100%, but definitely a big uptick in it compared to compliance here. And then we check, I think we check 5 of the controls out of the 8 of them. So just through word of mouth. I mean, all of a sudden we're doing demos at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I mean, we work the witching hours as well.
I've done that. That's
you know how it is.
So okay, this is interesting because every country, like UK has their own cyber essentials thing. Australia, now you're just talking about their thing. I would think the US version of that is CMMC. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes, yeah, close enough. I'd say that would probably be the closer thing to Essential 8.
Yeah, I just don't think CMMC is like a household or even like to the,
I
most
think
smaller
they're
businesses.
probably
I don't think
closer to
they get
CIS, most insurance questionnaires
CIS.
get.
Okay.
I think they're more, but you bring up the same thing happened in the auto insurance market, which is why you have so many uninsured motorists.
Mhm.
Unless we mitigate the cost of security and insurance combined, people are going to run unprotected. And so you solve nothing. Then all of a sudden they're not even going to conform with any of the guidelines. So it is a little bit problematic in that sense. You have to make it reasonable and so on, and make it not harm a client's business. And remember, we're the pirates that sold them Symantec 10 years ago, if you've been in the business that long. So I always tell people, remember that when your customer's a little resistant. I don't blame them. We have to educate them on the process that even what I'm offering you today is only going to be as good as we're ahead of the curve. And so we used to go down there and say, we got this Norton antivirus, you put it on your computer and go, we're good. And so it's reasonable for them to question, what's all this new stuff you're selling me?
That's true.
At
That's
that
true.
stage, you need to show the why and not the what. This is what we're selling you. But vendor fatigue is clearly a big thing for MSPs, but also for the end users. If you're constantly each year you're reading up your stack and you're adding more and more widgets and bits and pieces, they're going to get burnt out. Like, this is just a sales push every year. Here we come. Here comes Keith with his new bits and pieces. But you have to educate them. You have to show, look, this is why we're utilizing this. This is why we're moving to this MDR, EDR, or zero trust framework, whatever it be. As long as you can educate them, but therein lies a challenge as well. If they don't want to listen, what do you do?
I think that it's a little bit easier now. Like, I would say, coming out of, like, the pandemic was probably tough for everyone. You came out, business starting to get back to normal, things are rolling. But I think, like, I call MSP land a sandbox, right? There's a lot of sandboxes. Every industry has their thing, but I feel like people are talking about it more. I think in the past, like, you kind of hid from it, like, you didn't want to admit that you had a problem. I think, like, like, whether it's the doctors or the accountants or the lawyers or the engineers or whatever, I think they're all starting to say, yeah, so-and-so Joey over here got hit, and, like, we need to, like, not do that, right? And I think that's starting to spread a little bit more granularly these days rather than in the past. I think even MSPs have admitted more now that they've run into their own challenges, even internally, from even before. So I think the culture needs to continue to change to the point where, I'm not saying don't defend yourself and your company and make sure that you're doing the right things, but, like, we need to learn from how everybody's actually getting hit in order to understand the best way to move forward. And if we don't have enough data, how do we realize what's good or what's bad other than just building stuff to build it?
And that's you're seeing the channel obviously mature in that way as well, that traditionally people would not disclose that they've been hit for obvious reasons. You don't want to hurt your business, your reputation, whatever it be. But if you hide it all away, don't speak on it, no one's going to be none the wiser because of it. I watched Robert Kyofi, I don't know if I butchered his surname, speak. He did Write a Boom and stuff, and openly spoke about him being hit 4th of July weekend last year, and it's chilling. I mean, it is. For him, he's an MSP. If anybody doesn't know, an MSP based up in New York, I think 4th of July weekend, he got hit with, say, a VSA. I think a couple of thousand endpoints, all encrypted in a split second. I mean, no time. And he tells a phenomenal story that his CTO walked down the hallway just white as a ghost. Said, it's all gone. I said, what's all gone? It's everything. Everything is gone. Every endpoint they had under their umbrella was encrypted. And I mean, I use this as as a training material for my team. I train the MSP sales team. Hey, you should read this or watch this. Because if these guys don't come from MSP background and come from whatever sales roles in, that's not how you sell. You need to have empathy here. You need to realize there's real ramifications for people and their end users what really happens. So I mean, for him to be up on stage and speaking about it, and now he's spoken a number of times at different around the world. Actually, he was in Italy a few months back. I mean, I applaud it. It's fantastic. Good for you to go out there and kind of share your story and show how you got hit and how educate people on what the real impact is on it.
I think going back to the beginning of this session, but we've been talking about automation for so long, right? Like, hey, like how a 2-man MSP can become a $2 million MSP with just writing scripts and building automation. But when that automation's turned against you, that's the scary part. This is what we're talking about right now. So I think there has to be some, I know we've said it 1,000 times, but it's worth saying 1,001, right? Like MSP needs to do their internal housekeeping first, right? Because they could be the gateway to how their customers ultimately get hit. Okay. And like, it's the vendor's responsibility building software to make sure that they're doing it responsibly. It's the MSP's responsibility to make sure they're doing their part. End user obviously needs, their help to get it done. But it just seems like not everybody's on the same page though, Shane, Keith. Like some people just haven't even gone down this road. I think that's, it sounds crazy, right? Because all we've heard is security for the last 2-3 years. But some people are like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
It's an easier sale for people that are a little intellectually lazy. Of course. Yeah, it's easier to go in there. Remember, Kmart was real popular till it went broke. It's real easy to take the blue light out until you have issues. And then, you're gone. But, there are people, and then there are people that I talk to at conferences, you go, I'm going to be horrible. People are going to I wouldn't let them work on my cell phone, let alone my network.
Oof, bold statement.
And so you're going, I don't think they're doing anything malicious. They were building computers in their back garage, and all of a sudden they think I'm a guy.
I wouldn't be surprised if I'm a guy is an actual domain name out there. I'm a guy.com. Should probably go check it. So Keith, what's the bet? What is the minimum standard then, right? Shane, same question to you. What's the minimum standard? Like, I know there's differing levels of maturity. I know that's going to constantly be the case. That's just a time thing. What's the okay level? Is there an accepted level?
I don't think I'd answer. I mean, I don't want to be evasive. It really, I have to look at the business workflows, their exposure. I don't think the stack is, we have like one stack, and you have to include that in the real question is the implementation schedule, not the end result. That's my view. Other people may have different views. It may not be as easy to get everyone because of proprietary software, or you deal in some machine shops or some hotels with hospitality that have aged OS and aged a line of business software, and you're going like, this is going to take us a while to migrate us where you need to go. But the standard is the CIS standards or the CMMC, which are very similar in the line. I think that it's not a matter of what the end is, it's how you can get there without being too disruptive to the business, and then how you can mitigate the areas you can't address. As an example, and I think Shane and I have talked about this in the past, you start dealing in, and this is in military aircraft building, you're going, they have CMMC machines that we can't bring to OS compliant, and they're in the middle of building things to protect the country. So, and you can't completely ring fence them because they're talking to multiple end machines or talking to the CAD drawings, and the government requires them to report up to skunkworks. So you have to mitigate that as best as you can. You have to VLAN it. You have to maybe really be a lot closer looking at your SIM logs and your sys logs, and there's some things you can't solve the best way. So you have to learn how to mitigate those until you can.
I mean, listen, I'm going to throw out what I think is the case, just my opinion, Shane. I would say 5 or 6 out of every 10 MSPs out there have never looked at a single thing from CIS or CMMC for that matter.
Agreed.
I mean, like, I don't know. I just got to be honest with you. Like, that's, if I were to bring that up to every conversation, I don't think I would get half the people at least saying Yeah, I've heard of it, but I have no clue. I've never looked at it.
But I'm actually working with an MSP right across the road from us. And actually, I met him just by chance, not at a trade show. He's never been to a trade show. He's a decent sized MSP as well. Never been to a trade show, doesn't know any of the vendors, any of the stuff. He's just in a complete bubble, and he just goes and does his thing and has a stack and something. I was like, what influences your decisions? Like, how do you keep up to date? I was like, I just kind of wander through. But he's no slouch either. He knows his stuff. He's a smart guy, but it's crazy to me that he's just so insulated away from everything. So you talk about CMMC and HIPAA, he's like, huh? What? It's like, but at the same time, I look at it, he's doing what he's doing, and he's good at what he does as well. But I mean, there's a whole different aspect of the MSP community that doesn't, attend these shows, doesn't, like communicate in the channel and be or even part of the channel essentially. While they are an MSP, they aren't really part of the channel. And we come across them every now and again. They come across a website, click from us or whatever, and it's insane to me. At this stage, how do you even keep up to date with what's going on? It's like Reddit.
Well, I mean,
Reddit.
but by the way, Brent went and looked up I am a guy, and yes, it's taken. Surprise, surprise. It was worth it checking out. But we had a guy from Malwarebytes several sessions ago. He just started there. He was working at Microsoft. He was working at a couple enterprise companies. He left that, started a one-man MSP consultancy, morphed into MSP, morphed into a little bit of security focus, just sold his MSP, I think within the last year or two, and took his first gig on the vendor side in the sandbox for the first time. So pretty cool story, but that's how it happened, Shane, right? The reason I tell this guy's journey is usually it's somebody who was working IT somewhere or learned it the hard way, right? Was just very interested in it and just learned it over time. And, they put up IamAguy.com or a site like that. They start referral, word of mouth, and you build up a company. And then all of a sudden, business time happens and a business occurs. I mean, that's how a lot of people get to where they go, right?
Yeah.
The challenge is, I don't know what the magic answer is here, Shane, because I'm not sure there is one. There's just no way to keep up with the fire hose of changes that come down. And it's almost like they back into the technology, Shane, because their end customer raises their hand, says, I need this. And then they're like, well, let me go do some research and figure out what the options are, right?
Exactly. They all of a sudden they realize they have some kind of issue, some kind of problem that needs fixing. It's like, I don't know if the product out there. They are going to do a bit of research, maybe go on Reddit or go on some, MSP forums, whatever it be. And then, oh wow, there is a product out here that can do this, and this. And that we get that quite a bit. They figure out they have a problem, then they go looking for a solution. It's not us going to them, it's them coming to us.
I hope Reddit isn't the first place people go. I would hope not.
That goes back to if all the pigs eat at the same trough, they all gain the same weight. And if you have a bunch of guys spewing things that are incorrect just because they repeated them a lot, doesn't make it factual. In fact, if you ever study a chameleon, which is a different subject, they talk about that's called chanting. And there was a person who later became president that said, it's not about what's true, it's what you can get people to repeat. And we have to remember that. You get on those forums and you're going you're all listening to the same guy who was wrong.
I guess the big challenge moving forward is, what if we're all tied to the industry, right? We're all kind of typecast as an industry. If an MSP gets caught, in the wrong place at the wrong time and something bad happened, do we all not take a little bit of a hit for that, right? As a community, right? Isn't the goal to do the whole rising of all ships? I know that's the idea, but usually what happens is that an end customer gets hit, their name ends up in the headline, and then it goes back to, well, who was responsible for their technology? And then the dominoes start to fall, right? And then maybe we all look a little bad for that. Do you believe that?
Yeah, definitely. This is a communal thing. As you said, raise the tide, every boat all that. So, when one person gets hit, it's hurting the community. It devalues the end user's trust in the tech community, or in the MSP community. Oh, well, why am I paying this MSP? I just got hit. I was like, we know it happens. I don't care what your stack is. Like, it can happen. You can get that to the best of us. But all of a sudden, they start to question, oh, well, why am I paying an MSP? Why am I doing this? So I think, that shared knowledge of your experience, of their experience, if you've been hit or went through a security incident, by you sharing that with people, it's just going to raise awareness and promote, the channel, and promote the community to combat against it. At the end of the line, there's battle lines drawn. You see it, that you've got all these bad actors, you have all these ransomware groups and stuff. You can't beat it alone. No vendor or no MSP can go it alone on this. They're too sophisticated, too well organized. So the only way we can put up a fight against these is by the sharing of knowledge, sharing of what's working for you, sharing of those, like, these secrets that, they, by all means, I get it. MSPs will have local competitors and whatnot. That's one thing. You don't have to disclose your stack to everybody in your local town or city, so they can come outbid you, whatever be. But in terms of the forums, in terms of webinars like this, in terms of, actual shows and all the breakout rooms and such, that's the place to be sharing this knowledge. Raise the tide, make people aware of what happened to you, how you were got, and hopefully prevent other people to do it. And on top of that, just being a decent person. If you get hit and it costs you a whole bunch of money, costs you your business, if you can do something to prevent that happening to somebody else, why wouldn't you? Even if it is a competitor, do you really want to see them being hit, be out of business, or or even like their end user being a mom and pop company being shut down because of this? So, I'm all for pulling together and trying to kind of raise the tide.
Well, good news is you guys over at Threatlocker are running an event called Zero Trust World. So I think this is your third year.
Yep. Our third,
coming up here,
stay in Ireland.
Yeah. In Florida, February 1st to the 3rd. So we're a little less than 60 days out. Check this out, guys. Go to zerotrustworld.threatlocker.com. Check out the agenda. Looks like it's 3 days of a lot of learning, including hands-on stuff. So could be a chance for you to learn some of this more targeted security stuff. Plus, I feel like there's going to be a lot of events in Florida this year, but start the year off a little bit warm, especially if you're not living in the the Orlando sunlight like you are, Shane, and sometimes some rain.
Yeah,
for whatever it's worth, I mean, the more you learn, the better you're going to be. And there's a constant education process. So one thing we are working towards here at the MSP Initiative side, and I know we did a lot of the Channel Strong tour from 2020 through this year, and that was great. We're going to do 4 quarterly events going into 2023, all for you. We're going to bring experts together. We're going to bring, hopefully, people like Shane and his company to help do training. And we're going to do 4 events around the US quarterly, where it's just going to be working with subject matter experts to do something, right? Like, no offense, I've been to a lot of events, and like the hands-on stuff I love because that's how I learn. It's just me personally. But like, I can't tell you how many breakout sessions I've ever been to. I walk away from a PowerPoint slide, there's bullets, and it's like, oh, I guess I should learn how to do X. And like, I never start because, like they just give you the concept, right? I want to shift that the other way. I want you to walk out with something tangible. Is it a legal thing? Is it a sales thing? Is it a profitability thing? Is it a operations thing? We're going to bring some experts together. We're going to bring some companies that can do training in specific topics. And we're going to put that together. And we're going to do 4 community-based events so that we can help you, right? It's not about the pitch. It's not about the billboard. It's about you actually getting access to people who can help you progress something past an idea. Okay. So we're gonna share more information coming into 2023, but I think Zero Trust World is a good place to start, especially if you want to learn about security. Check it out. Plus, like I said, Florida in February. Sign me up. Shane, we saw you a lot this year. I know you're on the road a lot, although I think you're kind of lucky because all these events always happen in Florida for some reason, because like everybody wants to go to Florida, right?
I don't want local events. I mean, they have to drive home.
No hotel room for you, right?
No. So send me anywhere outside of Orlando, I'm happy. But yeah, look, I love doing the shows. You know me. I love being front and center. I love shaking hands, kissing babies, having those conversations. I mean, yeah, That's the part of my job that I adore the most. I'm happy. I don't like being away from my family, don't get me wrong. But if you can put me at these shows, I'm just happy. I'm sitting there beaming from ear to ear. I love it. They're long days, long nights, but I wouldn't change it.
Interesting. As much as we're a community about technology, man, do we love the in-person stuff, right? Like that, I think is the best. Everything that we do, I think, no, if any, unless you're just really like, you like to live in the cave and you don't like to be around people, take that aside. I mean, if that's you, cool, but I like the other way.
Yeah.
You cannot share a cigar online.
This is true. Did you finish all your cigars? Should we get you some more there, Keith Nelson?
You know, out of the ones I got at ConnectWise, which they gave me like 35, I'm down to 2.
Wow. Okay. So we need to restock.
Somehow they forgot to bring some downstairs, and some lady from ConnectWise saw me in the elevator and said, I heard you're the guy that won't let these go to waste. And I said, good choice.
This is true. Plus, you love to take high-end, travel, to and from the airport. Let's face it. Gotta, have the cigar, have the whiskey, have the limo. I mean, it all fits.
I learned from you, George.
Wow. I mean, but I'm not driving a Tesla either. Don't forget.
No, I don't drive them. I have them.
Yeah. Your employees drive them instead.
I got one for my son.
And your son. All right, guys. Shane, if anybody wants to talk to you, learn more about what's happening over at Threatlocker and with the addition of Third Wall, and just in general, maybe they want to learn a little bit more about Zero Trust World, how do they get a hold of you?
Shane.Deegan@threatlocker.com. I was give me my cell phone. It was 689-333-7036. Always get to laugh with my
he's gonna start getting spam
tip
now.
Yeah. But yeah, you guys, you want to reach out to me. I'm always available. I'm big on LinkedIn. You need an answer from me, guys. You have some questions, or just sit down and have a whiskey. Even I'm your guy as well. Tell some stories. I'm all about it. So
I have Keith Nelson with the cigars and you with the whiskey. I think we're in good shape.
It's a perfect pairing. There we go.
Exactly. Guys, this session was recorded. Go back. You're going to see it at mspinitiative.com under sessions. And we're going to keep doing these throughout the end of the year. We'll take a little break over that Christmas, New Year's holiday, and then continue on. Check out zerotrustworld.threatlocker.com, and we'll shortly be posting some information about those events we just mentioned earlier. And I can't wait to see people out on the road. Shane, talk to you soon, buddy.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.
You got it, guys. See ya.